Hi, my name is Ashley and I'm a mom of 2 little girls. I have a 4-year-old named Kylie and I also have a 2-year-old named Mia. Now, very recently, I published a video where I shared with you our entire daily routine from morning until night. And in that video, I also shared what our quiet time looks like, after which I received a ton of questions, all related to quiet time. So I thought it might be a good idea to sit down and create a video for you that was exclusively dedicated to how I'm structuring quiet time in my home and answering all of those questions that you guys had. And that, my friends, is today's video. So from one busy parent to another, today I would like to share with you 5 tips for implementing quiet time in your Montessori home. All right, so 2 quick things before we dive into the tips themselves. The first being a disclaimer / friendly little reminder that I am not a quiet time expert. I don't even know if something like that exists, but if it does, I'm not one of them. This video is just me sharing all of the things that I have learned. It's like an amalgamation of all of the general guidelines that I discovered when I was first learning how to structure quiet time for my kids at home. And I feel confident in saying that a lot of you will likely find them to be beneficial as well, which is why I wanted to share them with you guys. But of course, there are about 1,000 elements that come into play such that no 2 families are the same. So what's working for my family may not work for your family necessarily, and that's okay. But what I would encourage you to take from this video, no matter what, are the elements that maybe before you hadn't considered. Piece them into your family's routine, try them out, see if they work, and if they don't, that's all right. Leave it and try something different. And then the second thing that I wanted to share briefly with you are the benefits of quiet time, especially if this is a concept that is fairly new to you. So first and foremost, quiet time should be about your child and their developmental needs. Even though there are benefits for the parent as well, it's primarily about your child, because especially after they stop napping, they need a small little chunk of time in the middle of the day just to kind of rest their brain and relax and recharge both physically and mentally, because everyone otherwise is always in each other's faces throughout the day and it can be really overstimulating and exhausting. And so they need that little chunk of time, even all the way up through like the elementary years. They can benefit from having quiet time. So even if you think that your child is totally fine because they're waking up with a ton of energy and they're going to bed with a ton of energy and it doesn't really seem like they need the downtime, I would encourage you to reconsider where you can build some quiet time into your child's schedule, especially if you've been noticing that your child tends to be a little crankier in the afternoon, evening hours. Some people refer to it as the witching hour. Sometimes your child just needs a little bit of a reset to help them get through that last part of the day. Not to mention the incredible benefits of being able to offer your child dedicated time each and every day that they can look forward to, where they know that they'll be able to play independently, to exercise their creativity, explore their interests, do whatever it is that their heart desires in that moment without having to worry about an adult watching and judging and breaking their concentration by interfering constantly. It's something that your child will eventually learn to appreciate very quickly once they become accustomed to the routine. So that in and of itself is like a gift to your child. And then of course there are bonus benefits for you as the parent as well, because I'm sure I'm not alone in saying this, but it can be really hard work, like draining sometimes, to be on 24/7 as the parent or as the caregiver at home with your child. And so you need a little bit of time at some point, just like your child, to rest and relax and recharge so that you have enough energy to get through the last half of that day. And so your child's quiet time can actually be a built-in chunk of your day every day, where you get to squeeze in a little bit of that self-care that we seem to hear so much about and not ever get enough of. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. All right, so now that we've chatted all about why you would want to do quiet time, let's talk 5 tips for actually making it happen. And the first one is to make sure that you schedule quiet time every single day. And when I say schedule, I don't mean to put a time on it where you're saying, okay, quiet time is going to happen exactly at 12:30 p.m. each and every single day, because let's be realistic. Life happens. 12:30 is going to come and go on many occasions, and quiet time is not going to happen when it's supposed to, and it's just going to leave you feeling frazzled, and we don't want that. That's the opposite of quiet time. What I mean by schedule it is to make sure that quiet time is happening at roughly the same point in your child's routine each and every day. So for example, in our home, we have quiet time after lunch each day. So even if lunch happens to run late that day, my girls both know that right after lunch, we do quiet time. That is the expectation. And it's something that my children have learned to look forward to because they always know when it's going to happen, even if it's not exactly on the right time schedule that I would prefer. And it doesn't necessarily have to be scheduled smack dab in the middle of the day. I chose after lunchtime for my girls because that was when my youngest daughter used to take her naps. And so it naturally filled in what used to be nap time, now just kind of morphed into quiet time, and it worked for us. But again, if that doesn't work for your family, you can certainly do it earlier. You can do it a little bit later in the afternoon. What's ultimately most important is just being consistent so that quiet time becomes this predictable thing that's just a part of your routine and it's unquestioned each and every day. Tip number 2 is to set a timer, because if you've ever spoken with a small child, you know that their sense of timing can be incredibly warped. For them, 5 minutes feels like an entire eternity. So it can be incredibly helpful to have a very definitive beginning and ending marker so that, again, it makes quiet time very predictable for your child. They know what to expect, and then they can just relax into the routine. And the timer itself can be anything that you want it to be. In our family, we actually use our Alexa device to set a timer, and that works out great for us because our children both know what the timer sounds like because we use it so often when we're cooking and all the other activities that we do throughout the day. So they're accustomed to it and it works for us. But I also know that many families prefer to use a visual timer, which I don't have one, but I will pop a picture up right here what that looks like. So it actually shows the child like how much time is left visually on like a little circle, and they can kind of see, you know, that they've got a lot of time or a little bit of time left. And then of course it makes a sound when all is said and done so that they know quiet time is over. And then as far as the actual length of time that you're setting the timer for, definitely start small, especially if your child is really young or if they're brand new to quiet time. So when I say start small, I mean really small, like 2 minutes of quiet time, and that's it. Whatever your child can handle and still be comfortable and relaxed in the situation, that is where you want to start. And then over time, you'll gradually add on a minute here, a couple minutes there, 5 extra minutes there, until eventually over the course of say a couple of weeks, you're kind of working your way up eventually to the ideal amount of quiet time that you would like for it to be. But it is a process. It does not happen overnight. You have to move at your child's pace if you expect them to be cooperative about it and to actually enjoy their quiet time. So just as a point of reference, our family is working our way up to an hour of quiet time because I feel like that's a good amount of time for our family to be reset and to move on with our day. But some families may be okay with having a little bit less time. Some may need more time. Again, it's all about you and your unique situation. Now, tip number 3 is all about the kinds of activities that you want your child to be doing during quiet time. And I think the name kind of gives it away. You want them to be quieter activities that your child can do so that they can achieve that restful relaxation, that little moment in the day that you're after. And so it would be wise then to encourage them to engage with some open-ended materials like blocks, trains, magnet tiles, arts and crafts activities, Legos, whatever it is that your child gravitates toward, where they naturally tend to get a little bit more quiet all on their own. You don't have to tell them to be quiet. They just kind of seem to do it because they're focusing and they're concentrating and they're really interested in what it is that they're doing. If your child really enjoys reading, you might also encourage them to grab a couple of their favorite books ahead of time so that they have those out and available when they're ready for them. Or if they like listening to audiobooks, then you can set them up with the device that they use for listening to audiobooks. Whatever it is that your child is interested in, those are the kinds of activities that you would hope to have your child doing during quiet time. But I have also heard of families who like to use busy boxes for quiet time. And a busy box is exactly what it sounds like. It's a box that is just filled with like a small activity that has been put together ahead of time, or maybe it's filled with a specific toy or set of materials that the child otherwise doesn't have access to during other parts of the day. This way, when quiet time arrives, the child is excited, they're engaged because these are the special quiet time boxes that they don't normally get to play with. And so if if that is something that you feel like you can put together and you would be able to keep up with as far as rotating so that your child doesn't become bored with what's in the boxes, then that is certainly an avenue that you can explore. Just make sure that the creation of these busy boxes doesn't effectively turn you into the entertainer all over again, where it's constantly on your shoulders to figure out what your child is doing during quiet time, because that's not the goal. You want your child to be able to explore their own interests and do what it is that they want to do. So if at all it ever starts feeling like that's the territory you're entering and you've been doing the busy boxes, then you might consider taking a step back and maybe exploring just offering open-ended materials. That's what we do in our family, and it works great. And then don't forget that sleep can also still be an option. Even if you feel like your child is too old for a nap, they might feel tired that day and want to take a snooze for a little bit during their quiet time, and that's totally okay. So you can remind them that that is an option if they feel like they're tired. Okay, so tip number 4 is to find your own quiet time activity, and if at all possible, let it not be chores. Trust me, I know how tempting it is to want to tend to that chore that you have been neglecting for days on end because you have the time to do it finally without a little person tugging at your heels. But if at all possible, try to leave the chores for the times when your child can actually participate and help you with those things. Or if they're too little to help, they can just kind of play nearby and watch and observe as you're taking care of these chores. That's all part of practical life for your child. So don't wait until your child's quiet time and then go do it. Instead, use that time for yourself. This is where you can go off and make a cup of coffee and sit down and stare out the window and enjoy it without having to get up in the middle of it and come back, 30 minutes later to find that it's cold again. Or maybe you can sit down and read a book that you've been meaning to read for a really long time. Or if you have some other hobby, like I like crocheting, so sometimes I'll crochet during my daughter's quiet time. Whatever it is that makes your heart happy, even if it's just laying down on the couch and resting your eyes for a little bit, do something for you during that quiet time. Not only for your benefit, but also for your child, to model for them that you are a human being too, with needs and interests of your own, and that the world doesn't revolve around them. There are things that happen outside of them. They need to learn that. And so if they can see you engaging in an activity that makes you feel good, that you're interested in doing, that doesn't necessarily have to do with them, that's really great for them to see. And again, I know it's not always possible 100% of the time to sit down and have undivided you time during your child's quiet time because life happens. Maybe you have an infant who still needs to nurse or has other needs that need tending to and can't wait. Things like that are going to happen. But to the best of your ability, use your child's quiet time to at least sneak in 5 minutes of your cup of tea or whatever it is. Do a little something for yourself. And tip number 5 is to remain available, especially if your child is on the younger side or if they're new to quiet time. They need that assurance that you're still going to be there for them if they need something, and they need to know where to find you. So in the beginning, this might mean that quiet time actually happens in the same room as your child. Like maybe they're playing off to the side while you're sitting at the table doing your own thing, but otherwise you're still in their line of sight. They need that assurance in the beginning. But as they get accustomed to the routine, and especially as they get older, they will become more comfortable with going off out of your sight into another area of the home to play for more extended periods of time by themselves. What you want to avoid is making your child feel like quiet time is almost like this time of punishment where they have to go to their room and shut the door, play by themselves or sleep or do whatever it is that they're going to do, and they're not allowed to come out until the timer goes off. That is not an effective way to do quiet time. I mean, I'm sure it might work for some families, but I can tell you the child is probably not enjoying it very much, especially not in the beginning. Instead, what you want to do is make quiet time feel like it's this time where your child can do what they want. So if they want to go to their room and play because that is their preferred play space, they are welcome to do that. But there is no expectation that they have to shut the door and they're not allowed to come out. And there should not be an expectation that they can't interrupt you or come get you if they need you. Again, they are children. They need that assurance that you're always going to be there. So on occasion, is your child going to come find you during quiet time to tell you something or to ask you a question? Absolutely. It happens to me almost every single time we have quiet time. But my girls also know that the expectation is that they should be doing their own thing until the timer goes off, and that I am relatively unavailable during that time as well. And sometimes I have to verbally remind them of that, gently and kindly, of course. And if your child is on the younger side, then it might require that you gently redirect them back to whatever activity it was that they were doing. And again, just remind them that you'll be available when quiet time is over. Unless it's an emergency that needs to be dealt with right then and there, it can typically wait. And so again, it's just part of this consistency and being gentle and kind, but also firm about the expectations around what happens during quiet time. And over time, your child will eventually learn what the routine is and they'll respect it. And I said this earlier in the video, but I think it bears repeating. This is a gradual process. It's not going to happen overnight. So do your best to be patient with your child while they're learning. And finally, I have one more bonus tip for all of you parents of more than one child, because I'm sure you've been wondering to yourself this whole time, well, this sounds great, except what happens when they start arguing and fighting with each other during quiet time? What am I supposed to do? Well, first off, a lot of parents will actually encourage, especially if they're older, encourage their children to take quiet time in their own separate spaces. So one child might be in their room while the other one is playing somewhere else in the house. Maybe they're both in their own rooms, or maybe they're just in two separate areas of the home, but not necessarily their bedrooms. They will encourage them to play separately. But honestly, I think it's okay for your children to play together during quiet time if that's what they want to do. And truthfully, that's what my girls want to do almost every single time we have quiet time right now at the ages that they're at, 4 and 2. And so I think that's okay. And then sometimes, because they're playing together, arguments will naturally occur. And when I overhear these arguments happening, I really do my best not to get involved unless I feel like the situation is elevating to a point where I need to intervene. And like, as a parent, you can tell when it gets to that point. If that happens, which it doesn't happen as often as I imagined it would in the beginning, but when it does, I do go in there and I intervene to make sure that nobody's getting hurt, because obviously safety is your number one concern. But then I immediately go back to what it was that I was doing, and then I kind of leave them to figure it out on their own after that. And I think that seems to work pretty well. I have actually found over time that during quiet time, because I'm not physically present in the room with them most of the time, I'm usually off in my own little area during quiet time on purpose. I found that they really seem to try to figure things out themselves a lot more often now. Like, they're trying actively to problem solve because I'm not there, and they know that the expectation is that they should be doing their own thing. And so I think it's really great practice for them to try to problem solve. I think parents worry too much sometimes about these kinds of things, and we just have to let kids be kids sometimes. Again, as long as no one's being hurt, but we have to let kids be kids. We have to give them the opportunity to figure these kinds of things out on their own, because without the opportunity to practice, how are they ever going to learn? So again, if your children want to play together during quiet time, totally fine. If they'd rather play separately, that's fine as well. And if arguments come up, do your best not to get involved as much as possible. All right, friends, so those are my tips for implementing quiet time in your Montessori home. If you have any tips of your own that you'd like to share, then please drop those in the comments down below. If you are interested in learning more about doing Montessori at home or positive discipline parenting, I offer a couple of e-courses that walk you through it step by step. So I'll be sure to leave a link to that in the description box down below in case you're interested in checking it out. And just in case you're new to my channel, I also wanted to let you know that this video is part of a much larger series on this YouTube channel called Montessori at Home, which is aimed at providing practical tips and advice for busy parents like you and I for implementing Montessori at home with our children. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in watching more of, then you might consider subscribing to my channel. This way you don't miss a new video, because I do upload a new one just like this one every single week. Thank you so much for watching today, and I'll see you next time. Bye.